I do want to bring in Michael Makovsky, who is the CEO and President of JINSA, to talk more about this. And Michael, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So a lot of developments happening in the Middle East over the past few days. For our viewers who might not be up to speed, can you share with us the most important developments?
Yeah, thank you. I think I'm in Israel, as we said, and I think the main issue is that to focus on is I think the major operations of the Gaza war are really is winding down. I think they'll be over within a few days, or within a week or so. And I also think that the major thing is what you just referred to, which is the growing chance of a major Israel-Hezbollah war, which could involve Iran, as you were just referred to, the Iranians talking about obliterating Israel if there was such a war. I think that is the next thing that Americans need to focus on.
And deeply concerning. Before we get into that development, I want to go back to something that you just said, because I want to make sure that I heard you correctly in that you are expecting the war in Gaza to wind down in a week or so. What makes you say that?
Well, this is what I mean. We've been here. To clarify, I said major operations. I think will be winding down, the finishing of the major operations in Rafah. Israel's going to have to continue to do like counterinsurgency and so on in Gaza for, I don't know, a year or more. So there's still a lot of Hamas fighters that are still alive, based on what we've been told in meeting with senior military and civilian security experts. I mean, maybe those who aren't injured or captured or killed, it seems like there could be at least 10,000 left, Hamas fighters out of maybe originally 40,000. So they're going to, and a lot of them are really in the challenge for the Israeli military is that so many of them are in this phenomenal labyrinth of tunnels that's maybe 500 miles long in a small area. So it's going to take Israel a long time to still flush out a lot of the fighters, including, of course, Sinwar, the chief, and the number two, their chief. So, but I think in the major operations, including in Rafah, we've been told that those could be over within days or a week or, 2 weeks maybe.
Which is welcome news, I'm sure. I do want to ask you, when it comes to the major operations, how do the remaining hostages factor into that? Would that be then smaller operations for trying to rescue them, as we have seen periodically?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously trying to rescue them, and as the more areas that Israel's able to capture, particularly under the ground, hopefully they'll be able to find more of the hostages. Obviously, this has been a horrendous thing for this country. The original maybe around 240 or so hostages. There's about, somewhere around 120 that are left, but not all are expected to be alive, unfortunately. So there's still many hostages. You cannot go in Israel, I think, a block without seeing some reference to the hostages. We're seeing yellow ribbons, to having pictures of the hostages or slogans about bringing them back. It's consumed the country since October 7th, and I think it will continue to until all of them are returned, hopefully as many as possible alive.
And if I understand correctly, Michael, you recently spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu. What was that conversation like as it relates to the ongoing efforts to eliminate Hamas and bring the hostages safely home?
Well, he's certainly determined to do that, to do both of those. It's very clear that he communicates a few things, such as this is an Iran-backed axis. Iran is the story in all this. They're, Hezbollah, they're the main backer of Hezbollah. They're a key backer of Hamas, the Houthis in Yemen. You got Iran-backed militias in Syria and Iraq. Israel is fighting a multi-front war here, with America maybe helping a bit on some of that. But he's made it clear you cannot allow Hamas to He wants to bring the hostages back, but not at the expense of a victory over Hamas. A victory of Hamas is a loss and a disaster for Israel and for the United States. It's also a victory then for Iran. And he made it clear that this is a civilizational war that Israel is fighting, and essentially their fight is our fight, which I completely agree with.
We have seen increased attacks between Israel and Hezbollah. That is a major concern. We have been hearing of concerns over a growing war. From your expertise, from your background, do you feel such a war is inevitable?
I don't think it's inevitable, but one of the key takeaways I got from this trip, I'm still here in Israel, but has been the unsustainability of what is going on. So since Hamas's barbaric attack on Israel on October 7th, there has basically been a war of attrition between Israel and Hezbollah. And just so the audience understands, Hamas might have started the war on October 7th with about 20,000 rockets. Hezbollah has about 150,000 to 200,000 rockets, plus a few hundred precision-guided munitions. They have more fighters with a lot more experience. Hezbollah it's a completely different and far more serious strategic threat to Israel. And but the thing is, Israel knows about that, and I wrote some recently, and I think they made a strategic mistake, Israel allowing the Hezbollah to get so strong. But the fact is, since October 7th, the Israeli government, the war cabinet, didn't want to fight a multi-front war. So it's trying to do what it can to quiet things down in the north while trying to finish the job in Gaza. They're going to be able to, Israel is going to turn their attention more in the north. The question is, where's the United States? And I think this is one of the big concerns we hear from not just civilian, but military leaders. They're very concerned how there's been a slowdown of delivery of weapons or a stoppage on some weapons to Israel that they need, not for Gaza, but for Hezbollah. And I'll add one more thing. Last week that was discussed here, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Chairman Brown, made a statement, which I'm sure was approved by I don't know, but I assume was approved by higher-ups, that suggested the United States isn't going to support Israel with Hezbollah as much as it has, let's say, on April 14th when they did that coordinated response to the Iranian attack. Basically, the concern here is that there's too much daylight between Israel and the United States, and that incentivizes Hezbollah to keep going and the Iranians to keep supporting them. And that makes war more likely because Israel cannot tolerate over 60,000 of their citizens displaced from their northern communities because of rocket fire from Hezbollah, and Israel's going to have to do something about it. Hopefully that could be worked out diplomatically, but I think what it's incumbent, in my view, is that if President Biden and his administration could make it no daylight between the United States and Israel, I think that would contribute to more stability and reduce the chances of a major war. But the more daylight there is, the more between the United States and Israel, the more chances of a major war that neither side wants and the United States does not want.
Let's talk about the global impact to this potential war. Right now, the war itself is relegated to the Middle East, and countries such as the United States have been providing aid and funding to Israel, but have not been directly involved. And when we take a look at what may be coming down the line between Hezbollah and Israel globally, how significant is this conflict and potential war?
Well, I think it could be very significant. Again, the hope is, I don't think Hezbollah wants a war now with Israel. I know that the Israelis don't want a war now, and I don't think, and the United States doesn't. So that said, even though none of the parties want a war now, you might get one. And to answer your question, what would be the implications if such a war happened? So there'd be a few different scenarios. One scenario could be that Israel says, look, we've had enough. We're going to have to bring in ground forces, let's say in southern Lebanon, create a barrier. The question is, if they start doing that, would Hezbollah just keep it a more contained war, or would it become a much more significant war? If it's the latter, and then you get the Iranians involved, then you, as the Iranians said today, then you're going to have more fire from the Iranian-backed militias, from the Houthis and so on. I think that's why it's really, I don't think it's in anybody's interest right now that there be a war between Israel and Hezbollah. Certainly the Biden administration does not want one, but the irony is by making it clear they don't want a war, by thinking that by creating daylight and making it clear, not just to Israel, but everybody else, that the United States will not support, that there'll be a limit to Israel, support of Israel. If it does have a war, you're going to make a war more likely. So I really think, again, you want to contain this conflict. You want to try to convince the Iranians and Hezbollah the United States will stand by Israel till the hilt, and that they need to stand down, they meaning Hezbollah and the Iranians, and stop this fire from the north. No country, certainly the United States, would tolerate such a thing. Imagine if we had rocket fire from Mexico for 8 months, and we had border communities in Texas that were, depopulated. We wouldn't tolerate it. And the Israelis, I think their patience is starting to wear very thin.
So you mentioned that no one wants a war. What is the end game then for Hezbollah? Why are they even doing this if they don't want to create a larger conflict?
It's a good question. I think I think one of the ways is that when Hamas attacked on October 7th, and even though I think Hezbollah helped train Hamas, I'm not aware that Hezbollah knew about the very day of the attack or everything involving the attack, but they had to show, I think, some support for Hamas, and so there was that. And things have a tendency, I think, to get out of hand. There's also a sense of maybe trying to weaken Israel right now, but I think the country is actually phenomenally resilient. I think what they're lacking is they just, frankly, they need ammunition more, they need more weapons, and they need more public support from the United States. But it's a good question. But I mean, the Iranian strategy for years has been really to try to weaken the Israelis, to keep it under siege, and keep it, I think, diverted on these sort of things while the Iranians are advancing their nuclear program. And that's really the big elephant in the room here, is that program is advancing, and Israel obviously has to take care of Hamas in the south, address Hezbollah in the north, without keeping its eye off the ball in Tehran, which is the nuclear facilities there, and preventing a nuclear Iran.
Michael, before we let you go, is there anything else that you are keeping a very close eye on, or anything else that you would want our viewers to know about?
Well, I appreciate that. I think that one thing is, besides from what we've talked about, which is a lot, obviously, we've heard some things about the West Bank. I think that has not been in the news as much, which is good. I think Israel has been pretty aggressive with trying to weeding out terrorists in the West Bank since October 7th, but it's something to watch. Does that stay contained in the West Bank? Because that is also another front, and it also cuts through the heart of Israel. I think there are two other things I would look at. Another one is Jordan. Clearly, we're hearing there's a concern over Jordan. The Iranians would like to destabilize the king, who is an ally, a close ally of the United States, and also works closely with Israel. It's like perceived as the strategic depth of Israel. I think we want to keep an eye out on the stability of the monarchy in Jordan. And third, I would say, is that is the Houthis, and making sure that the waterways there off of Yemen stay open. I think the United States needs to do more. I think overall, the thing to watch out for is America. Are we deterring our enemies here? Are we clarifying that this is a battle that really affects us, which I believe it does? The same enemies of Israel. By the way, Hezbollah has so much blood, American soldiers' blood on their hands of Americans that they have killed, so even in Lebanon alone. So this is a fight that I think that Israel is fighting really affects us. And I think it's very important for America to stand very strong, to be very assertive, backing up Israel and making clear to the Iranians where we are in this war. And I think there could be no ambiguity about that.
Michael, thank you so much for taking the time live from Israel to join us on this Sunday. We appreciate it.
Thank you. I wish everybody a happy July 4th in a few days. So thank you.
Absolutely. And same with you.